Welcome to our Ocean Studio. I'm your host, Craig Wynn, and this is your co host, Wookie. Asher is on duty here at my feet. We'll probably pick up Asher later in the show. We are now turning to another Mizmowr of Dowd. This will be the 11th. Um, we've covered more than that, but it is the 11th chronologically as they're at least presented today in the order of the Masoretic text. The original order was probably quite different. We actually don't know the timing that each was written. I'm not sure it makes a great deal of difference since in Hebrew verbs are liberated in time and true for all time. But nonetheless, this is number 11. And we reference the numbers not because they were designated this way long ago. I doubt that they were. There were no, obviously, chapter and verse designations anywhere to be found until really quite recently. And they emanated with Christians, not with Torah observant Jews. Um, but that said, they do help us reference the portions of the text that we're talking about, and for at least that purpose, so long as you don't assume that they have any validity other than they're a reference to the portion of the text that is being discussed, and you don't cherry pick things and think that if you've cited a verse entirely that you have kept things in context, then it's fine to reference them. Anyway, as we progress with Dowd's insights, we have the opportunity to witness a reality that is so different than the rest of the world and how they perceive God and indeed the Messiah. Uh, Almost everything our culture has indoctrinated us into believing is actually false, particularly when it comes to God. And much of what we have been encouraged to discount and ignore about God is actually true of him. So let's continue. It begins to and concerning the everlasting and majestic God. We have seen this on so many of these songs written by Dowd, and it really speaks of Yahweh. He is the eminent and enduring director who continuously leads. It's from Ha Nashak of Dowd. So once again, this is of Dowd. If you're unfamiliar with that pronunciation, the fact is that Dowd's name is written as DWD, Daleth, Wah, Daleth. Every time that anything is attributed directly to him that he wrote, so my guess is he probably knows how to spell his own name, and anything written by a prophet within 3 centuries of Dowd's life is also written as Daleth, Wah, Daleth. So I'm going to assume that God knows how to pronounce his son's name and write it, and that the king also was literate and could write his own name. And therefore it is Dowd. There was never a V sound in Hebrew language. So it cannot be David. And the I does not appear in his name. There is in some of the books that were written much later, a supplemental yod added to Dowd. It's only about 20% of the overall times that his name appears that the yod is added between the wah and the final daleth. But as I say, every other mention, and particularly all those closest to him, are written Dowd, Wah, Daleth. So you should just become more familiar with it. That's his name. We don't have any right to change it. He is God's chosen one, and that's the name that was chosen for him. With Yahweh, that's another name that we ought to become more familiar with. Yahweh is God's one and only name. A pronunciation of it is not difficult. You can come to it very directly, although I take an entire chapter to prove it to you. Don't want the microphone to be in your way there, Wookie. I'm sorry if it's intruding on your napping area. You can prove it comprehensively, as I did in the entire chapter of An Introduction to God, introducing the proper pronunciation of Yahweh's name. But Two words by themselves take you to this place. Three, if you want icing on the cake. The first would be Haya, which is the basis of Yahweh's name according to Yahweh. He says that his name was based upon the Hebrew verb Haya, where the He and the Yod are properly pronounced. There is the Yah conclusion of the name, which certainly tells you how to pronounce three of the four letters in Yahweh. And it was revealed to us in a book that Yahweh referred to as his Torah. The O sound in Torah, the vowel O in Torah, as well as the Ah sound at the end of Torah, were both tell us how to pronounce Yahweh's name. The Wah is the O sound in Torah. That's where it comes from. And the He is the ending of Torah. That's the ending letter of Yahweh's name as well. And if you don't like Torah, if you think there's a chance that the second most commonly repeated Hebrew word is mispronounced, then how about shalom? Shalom is the most commonly pronounced Hebrew word, and the O sound in shalom is delivered by the Wah, which is a vowel. And so this reads, with Yahweh, I find someone I can trust to keep me safe. Chesah, I am comfortable, restful, and resilient, at peace, protected, and in perfect harmony by having properly placed my confidence. So why would you say of my soul, he is now asking idiots, particularly the religious and specifically Christians, why would you say of my soul, flee, flutter away, wandering aimlessly to your mountain like a bird? Mizmowr lyrics to sing, Psalm 11:1. Religious leaders would have Dowd all but disappear. For them, his life was little more than an aimless pursuit of personal grievances, his words lamentable, his attitude that of an incurable complainer. But most of all, they are bothered by the fact that God said of him and did through him everything that they have sought to attribute to themselves or to others. They would have him flutter and fly away and then remain in the place they view with contempt, which would be, in this case, Zion. The easiest way to simulate this flight of fancy was to take that which was redeeming from him and give what God bestowed to Dowd to another. In so doing, at least in their eyes, his life became irrelevant. After all, he was robbed and destitute after they had maligned him. So his people, his purpose, his prophecies, and his songs, even his relationship with God as the very Son of God, the chosen one, was reduced to being nothing more than the forefather of a nameless Messiah. What had been written about him was spun in the centrifuge of replacement theology. They took the unrecognizable result and applied it to themselves, their expectations, and their incarnation of salvation. In this regard, Dowd was observant, but not the least bit amused. He put all of us on notice. What follows is indicative of that, and it's beautifully written and vividly depicted. I think we had someone drive through our driveway, which caused the Wookiee to go into watchdog mode. He is very serious about his security services. Might be small in stature, but he's big in attitude. Indeed, behold, those guilty of vexing religious malfeasance, Rasha, those who are wrong, evil, hostile to God, and wicked, and condemned for their lack of ethics, these who are culpable, horrid frauds with massive crimes, have bent the bow. They have fashioned and aimed their arrows upon the string to shoot through the darkness and the shadows at those who are straightforward and correct in their thinking and judgment. Mizmowr 11:2. From Dowd's point of view, certainly from mine, after having written 5 books on Christianity, which I entitled Twistianity, The religious have taken aim at Dowd. They have performed armed robbery. Jesus is nothing but the product of identity theft. They committed a horrible crime. So this is prophetically addressing the times when Imperial Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, the Holy Roman Empire, and all that would grow out of this beast, including the Orthodox and Protestant versions of Christianity, European kingdoms, and indeed the Third Reich, and now the Fourth, based upon MAGAs, are all ready to assail everything that pertains to God. They have bent the bow of religious malfeasance and pointed their arrows directly at Yahweh's people, Yehudim, Jews. It is amazing to watch today with mainstream talking heads and influencers like Tucker Carlson just turning to nothing but anti-Semitic tripe. And I think Candace Owens may even be more popular than he is. And their popularity is derived from the overall popularity today of anti-Semitism. The world has gone crazy in its hatred of Jews, blaming Jews for everything. It's back to what the world experienced in the beginning days of Hitler's rise to power and the Third Reich, now with the rise of the Fourth Reich and Donald Trump. It's going to turn out very, very badly for the world at large. And these idiots promoting this, who are taking aim, who have placed their arrows on their bows to take direct aim at all things that pertain to Yahweh, Dowd, and the Torah and the prophets, the covenant, the Moed Mikre, Yisrael, Yehudim. The next 10 years is going to be their dominion, and they're going to make a mess of this world, and the result is that they will not survive beyond that period of time. They'll all be gone. So this following statement is a rhetorical question. Dowd is asking us if we know the most appropriate way to respond to what Paul and his Roman Catholic Church have done to demean and replace Yahweh, his Torah, and his covenant. Boy, speaking of the Roman Catholic Church, beginning to just to see some semblance of what Pope Leo has been advocating. He was always a bit crazy. You could just tell that there was something not quite right about that dude. You know, he began by groveling all over statues to Mary, and the traditionalist says, "Wow, this is a man after our own cause. He's going to be there to support Mary, the Mother of God, the Queen of Heaven, and the Madonna and Child," and was venerating statues of her. And now he's saying, "Don't pray to Mary. No, don't pray to Mary," and putting crowns on the heads of babies and statues of Mary. I'm telling you, this is one weird dude who don't know how that's going to turn out. But, you know, since he's a young enough man, he is likely to be the last pope unless he is somehow unpopeized through his most recent edicts. We'll see how it plays out. I don't have a dog in that hunt, and that I'm exceedingly anti-Christian and particularly anti-Roman Catholic, but it is nonetheless interesting. So indeed, when the most basic principles, the very foundation, the shath, the fundamental elements which frame and define issues, the purpose and the means of support are torn down, Wookie, they don't do that. What should those who are right do? Mizmowr lyrics to sing Psalm 11:3. Obviously, Dowd knew the answer, which is why he was asking the question. We should know it too, because, well, we have read what Yahweh inspired him and other prophets to compose. And having studied his response, that would be wise for it to reflect our own. And in this regard, the Messiah and Son of God, Dowd, is blatantly and boldly confrontational. He is ever prepared, willing, and ready to expose and condemn that which is Rasha, that which is contrary to God's instructions, and those who claim that they speak for the Christian God against Jews are Rasha. We should oppose them. We should condemn them. So let's be clear. The most basic principles of the Torah have been assailed and dismantled by Christianity. It began with Yahweh's name and even Dowd's name. The Christian God would not be known as Yahweh, and the Messiah would not be Dowd, but instead be called the Lord Jesus Christ, although there was no Jesus and no Christ in first century Yehudah. Yahweh's teaching and guidance would be mischaracterized as laborious and as a list of arcane laws which were no longer relevant and could not be obeyed, nor could they save. And this is largely the function of rabbis mischaracterizing the Torah as laws when the Torah is not a set of laws, it's a set of instructions. It contains guidance. The Torah is an exceedingly unreligious book. Yahweh's covenant was replaced with a new and different one, completely detached from the Torah and from Israel, even from Yahweh. Its conditions and benefits would be forgotten and annulled. In the 89th Mizmowr, the first statement that Yahweh makes relative to Dowd is to say that it was through Dowd that he cut. Therefore, he established his covenant. Therefore, without Dowd, there is no covenant. Not a first one, not a second one, not an old one, not a renewed one. There is no covenant. Yahweh said explicitly that he, cut, established his covenant, the Bereth, the one and only covenant, with Dowd. Calls him out by name. He says that Dowd is also his chosen one, and he says that Dowd is his co-worker. That's just in the opening statement by Yahweh in the 89th Mizmowr. It would go on to say many, many more things about Dowd, even calling him the Taruw'ah, which is the sacrificial lamb that fulfilled Pesach, that he is called by Yahweh the Son of God. And he is said to have been anointed directly by Yahweh, making Dowd the Messiah, not that other guy. So the invitations to be called out and meet with God would suffer a similar fate, each superseded by a Babylonian holiday, beginning with Christmas and Easter. But, the rabbis also played a role in this. They misappropriated every one of God's instructions. They completely ignore matzah, making Passover a 7-day holiday when it's just the first day of matzah. They ignore Bakurim. They have twisted Shabuah so it's no longer has any semblance of meaning. They've turned Taruw'ah into a Babylonian holiday. They've added Purim with absolutely no basis in Yahweh's teaching. They have added Hanukkah again without any instruction from Yahweh. They have corrupted Kippurim so that rather than being a day of reconciliation and a day to celebrate the return of Messiah, Dowd, and Yahweh, it is now a day for twirling chickens and for abusing oneself. And Sukkah is a time to live in grass huts, straw huts, as opposed to a celebration of our return to Eden in just about 7 years from now. They have it all messed up. Anyway, as Christianity would grew, the Shabbat was torn asunder as Sunday came to reign as the Lord's Day. Hebrew was discarded in favor of Greek, then Latin, as the truth was lost in translation. Israel was demeaned and cast aside for a Gentile church. It was blamed for killing the man who was the Christian God. The intended relationship became a fraudulent religion. Truth gave way to faith. Reliability became changeability. And consistency was overthrown by contradiction, such as the nature of Christianity. Even Dowd, Yahweh's beloved son, the chosen one, the branch, the protective shepherd, the set-apart one, the anointed Messiah, the sacrificial lamb, the eternal king, would be mischaracterized in order to make Jesus appear credible. Even then, after affording their Savior a Greek name and a Greek title, Christians would deprive Dowd of his role as the Passover lamb, thereby negating their salvation. Prayer defined as talking to God replaced Shama, listening to him as man's opinions took precedence over Yahweh's testimony. From there, it would be a simple matter of bewildering the masses such that they would reject the truth and believe even the most perverted of lies. And once you had a majority hoodwinked into believing the deceptions, well, then you built mighty churches and cathedrals to impose the perceived credibility of the belief system. Therefore, from the view of billions of people, ignorant as they are, irrational as they are, God would actually be born. He would come into this world, our world, as a baby, doing so on Christmas Day, which was the day celebrated by pagans. He would die. Can you imagine that? God, a dead God. Yeah, his symbol would be that of a dead God on a stick. What a lovely way to celebrate your religion with a torture device. The Passover lamb would be resurrected on Easter Sunday rather than having been sacrificed for the well-being of the participants. The Babylonian Trinity would be ordained as godly. The adversarial Lord, Satan himself, would be worshipped as if he were a god. The chosen people would be condemned as inferior by Romans, then Roman Catholics, so that the Gentile church could predicate their new religion on supersessionalism. Those advancing such lies would be admired and enriched, while those refuting them would be scorned and ridiculed. Welcome to the here and now that these Mizmowr Psalms have been assailing. As recently as the spring of 2020, the Lutheran Church's Danish Bible Society revised a translation of the New Testament, and they called it the New Agreement. These anti-Semitic advocates of replacement theology not only excluded Yahweh's Torah and prophets and Psalms, they excluded any mention of Israel. Ignoring the obvious that present-day Israel is located within the boundaries God depicted, that the population is comprised of Yehudim Jews, and that their official language is Hebrew, and that there are countless prophetic declarations depicting Yahweh's return to Israel on behalf of Israelites, the Bible Society justified their conspiratorial animosity and rancid racism by falsely claiming the ancient Israelites are not linked to any substantive or material way to the contemporary modern state of Israel. Huh? What? Because you want it to be true? Because you say that it's true? Doesn't make it true. The biblical narrative of the Israel has almost nothing to do with contemporary Israel other than the intentional manipulation of sacred text to justify a political project. This was cited from a speech given by evangelical Lutheran pastor. I think I shared this the last time we were in this position. His name was Robert Smith. He's a stalwart of the World Council on Churches and a proponent of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. He's your typical anti-Semite. So when liars lie, especially religious narcissists and self-aggrandizing psychopaths, they almost always project their own following or faults on those they oppose. And this is precisely what has occurred here. It is the Danish Bible Society that is trying to justify a political project, and they have manipulated their sacred text to claim for themselves something that has nothing to do with them. Now, at the same anti-Semitic conference, a Muslim who had converted to Christianity, we'll call him a fake Estinian pastor. His name was Mitri Raheb. He chimed in. He says, "It wasn't the Lord God who promised Israel the land. It was the Lord Balfour." Cute, but stupid. And he would indict himself further with Jesus was a Middle Eastern Palestinian Jew. No. Palestine is nothing but an ethnic slur. It was first conceived by Hadrian when burning Jews alive, wrapped in Torah scrolls, so that he could rename the province of Yehudah, Philistina, Syria, all to simply erase the truth and replace it with a lie. And it would have been a forgotten lie, a stupid, irresponsible lie that no one in their right mind would have continued, except, well, the British have never been in their right mind. They have always been anti-Semitic. They're the scum of the earth, and they're the ones who kept the lie alive. By the way, Lord Balfour, yeah, he was a Brit too. Well, I can't speak of for the Lord of a-holes. Yahweh spoke of Israel. He spoke of Zion. He spoke of Jerusalem over 3,000 times in his Torah, promising to return to this very place on behalf of his people. Unfortunately, based upon what Dowd revealed in his Mizmowr, those of us who have come to love Yahweh, adore what he and Dowd have achieved together, we will endure. And this putrid, jaundiced verbiage of those who oppose Yehudim and Yisrael, they will be no more. Good riddance. Life is about, well, exclusion and inclusion. We are afforded the opportunity to choose between God and man. Christians have chosen man. I've chosen God. I hope you do as well. Now, long ago, some 14 billion years, of course, looking back from our perspective, relative to the position, God's position at the Big Bang, it would have been just 6 24-hour days, the proof of which that 6 24-hour days and 14 billion years are the same length of time relative to the vantage point of the witness is proven by the microwave cosmic radiation that emanates still from the Big Bang. And when you do the math, you'll see that time was stretched to 10 to the 12th power. You divide 14 billion years by 10 to the 12th power, you get 6 24-hour days. So this is an equivalence that, well, Twistians have never managed to make. And since he created the universe, conceived life, authored his Torah, and offered his covenant to become part of his family, anything our Heavenly Father could do with us or through us, he would not do alone. This is one of the things that is just completely missing through the religious. God specifically said that he was not going to speak directly to his people, that he would, in fact, speak through men of his choosing. This means that God could not have been Jesus. I mean, the fact is, God's not a man. But this notion that God spoke directly to his people as Jesus contradicts what God said that he would do. Now, in heaven, he has positioned himself, and he has done so in a way that can empower us to condemn those who would do that which God has warned against. And whether or not we engage as he intended, well, that's up to us. But be aware, even though Yahweh is leaving this up to us, he is aware of our choices in this regard. He knows those who can be trusted to engage and to support his agenda. So Yahweh is in his set-apart sanctuary. This is something that Yehudim Jews would be wise to know, because they think that they can go off to war with yet another enemy or bomb the same enemy and that God is going to protect them. That is not the case. He would if they would return to him, but they have not. They've written him out of their name, out of their country, out of their religion, out of their lives, literally erasing his name. And so Yahweh is not going to return and protect them until they return and to him. So Yahweh's seat of honor is in the heavens. This is true. He uses his faculty of sight to perceive what can be observed regarding the agreement. His gaze is like the beam of light, and it assesses the children of man. This is Psalm 11:4. For most of the past, 3,000 years, Yahweh has been hands off. allowing man to do as he pleased. He intervened to provide, well, this and other prophetic testimony through prophets such as Yeshaya, Yirmiah, Zechariah, Hosea, and Malachi, Yoel are all examples. And otherwise, he has been silent. He consented to have his beloved son Dowd fulfill his obligation to serve as the Passover lamb and to honor his promise on behalf of the covenant regarding, well, unyeasted bread, firstborn children. And by fulfilling these Moed Mikre in year 4000 Yah, 33 CE, in his second of 3 lives, well, Dowd has enabled the promise of 7-7, which is upcoming. And he has intervened through his malach, his spiritual representatives, to protect those who have been about his business. Well, that's it. There has been nothing more. And that isn't because God wanted it to be that way, but because we left him with no other viable option. Yahweh looked for someone who was willing, but he found no one. He makes that very clear through the prophet Yeshaya, Isaiah. Not for a decade, not for a century, not for even just a millennia, but for a score of centuries. He found no one, not among his people, not even among Goyim, that would listen to him. Pretty amazing, considering he is God, considering what he had to say. Now that we are approaching the time of God's final return, this will be on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, October 2nd, 2033. Yah was moving among his people. He's inspiring those devoted to the prospect of calling his people home. He is now easier to find and know than he has been in a very long time. And God wants to interact with his children. It's all he has ever wanted. But for that to occur, we have to do our part. Our approach to God must be based upon facts, and our assessment of his testimony must be accurate. And then we must respond correctly. And even when we make mistakes, we must show that we can correct them, learn from them, and grow as a result. And as this occurs, our motives will be genuine and we will engender God's respect. It says Yahweh examines the genuineness, the bakan. He observes, closely examining, carefully considering, even testing the reaction of those who are upright and correct. This is something I just want to underscore because it is so essential to understanding what went wrong in the garden 6,000 years ago and what's going to be the purpose of going forward through the celebration of Sukkah as we move forward in time to October 2nd or 7th of 2033. When Yahweh evaluated what Adam did in the Garden of Eden, he came to the conclusion that there was no way to resolve what he had become. He became lethargic. He was not listening. He was not responsive. He was not engaged. He was making no contribution. And God recognized that in any mistake he made, there was no attempt to correct it. If he stumbled, he remained down and wallowed in his pity and shame. Under those circumstances, there was nothing God could do. He could not allow Adam to be anything more than he was. And as he was sort of like a goldfish swimming in a bowl in this protective enclosure. So God made the decision to cause the fall of man to give us the opportunity to rectify that situation, to show that we could be observant, that we would be willing to listen to what he has to say, to be thoughtful about it and consider the consequences of his instructions and guidance, and then to be responsive, to engage, to make a contribution, to make the covenant relationship better, to make our lives and God's existence more interesting, more enjoyable, and mostly to demonstrate that we could be trusted, we could be relied upon, that when we made a mistake that we would learn from it and grow as a result. Are we genuine? Are we worth God's willingness to remove us from the constraints of physical bodies and from this planet and allow us to explore the universe with him. And for that, God must know that we are trustworthy, that we are observant, that we are genuine, that we can be relied upon to do the right thing. And if we make a mistake, to learn from it. There was a marvelous post about a song. The song is exactly what we're talking about here. It's a song about inviting all who are willing to listen into Sukkah, which is 1,000-year celebration of getting our relationship right with Yahweh. And there will be covenant members who have already done so as the standing grain. And Yahweh is going to allow this mortal remnant of Yisrael and some Goyim into this celebration, this 1,000-year celebration of life called Sukkah. And in it, the entire earth is going to be transformed in the conditions found in Eden. All religious and political effects are going to be eliminated, as will be all those who are overtly political and religious and conspiratorial and militaristic. They'll all be gone. All anti-Semites will be gone. And during that time, the primary purpose will be for this mortal remnant to learn how to listen to God, how to evaluate what God has said, how to respond appropriately so they're engaged, making a difference, making a contribution, and show that they're genuine, that they can be trusted. This is what we're going to be doing. And there was this beautiful song on it, and a first-time attempt by some of our newer team members in the graphics, the branding group. I had created a video and graphics to go with the song, and I noted, well, you've done a marvelous job. This song's beautiful. The graphics are beautiful. I have some suggestions, however, and the suggestions were, there were some typographical errors, about 20 of them, and you probably want to clean those up a little bit. And since the invitation is to Sukkah, it's back into the garden and not walking through a desert. So let's change that graphic a bit if we could. And I said this in the light of this very thing. We're going into Sukkah. It's a time of examination, of careful consideration, of constructive criticism, if you will. And we can say that's a good start, which I did, and then say, here's how we can make corrections and make it better. And we need to be comfortable with that kind of thing, because that's going to be our experience over the next 1,000 years. So God's going to examine the genuineness of those who are upright and correct, of those who have been allowed into the garden. And then it says, but the deceitful one who is wrong and religious, the Rasha, the fraudulent, the wicked, the guilty of leading others astray, and the one who is fond of a cob, who desires and becomes familiar with violence, that which is wrong, destructive, that which terrorizes and maims without moral restraint, plundering and looting others, he hates his soul. Yep, that's what it says. He hates his soul. Mizmowr lyrics to sing Psalm 11:5. That's Shane. Shane nefeshu. He hates his soul. Hate is a virtue. If you don't hate, then you are incapable of love. And it's just a fact. I'm always surprised that so few people understand this reality, that you can't be genuine in your compassion for anyone unless you know who, what, why, when, and especially how to express righteous indignation. To protect children, you must be opposed to pedophiles and pedophilia, as well as any religious or political incitement to be pedophiles, like Islam. You must care enough for women's rights to be opposed to rape and to sexism. And uh, religions are the primary instigators of the debasement of women. And if you do not despise those things which have been so hostile to women, including the rape of women, then you're not being compassionate. You're not being just. Uh, you should be opposed to terrorism and to religious and political doctrines that encourage it. So there are things that you must be opposed to and despise for you to be compassionate and loving, for you to be moral, for you to be righteous. And God is trying to model this for us and to tell us that when it comes to those who are misleading Rasha religiously, and those who are violent, those who are destructive, those who are terrorists and maim others without moral restraint, who plunder and loot them, that he hates them. He hates their soul, which is even worse than hating them, because, well, their soul is going to be cast into Sheol. So, volume 1 of Observations, which I wrote, a very, very long time ago, the opening statement was, hate is a virtue. It was not my opinion or my idea. Saying so did not make me ignorant or mistaken. It's God's conclusion. Not that God needs anyone to defend him, but nevertheless, evidence and reason dictate that he is correct in his assessment. Humankind has been mistreated, has been abused, has been deceived and traumatized for the past 5,000 years because far too few people have had the courage or compassion to oppose the religious, political, militaristic, and conspiratorial influences which have been so universally corrupting and corrosive. Unless and until far more of us learn what and how to hate, the caustic influence which has stained every human civilization and bloodied humankind, perpetrating all manner of violence, it's going to continue to be just as destructive and deadly and deceitful and damning as humankind has been since the beginning of time. And I am overtly condemning of Rahab. That would be Donald Trump. He is the integration of man, the worst of man and Satan. And to not denigrate him is to be among the many who fail to warn the world of the consequence of someone this disingenuous, of someone this demonic. We need to hate, and we need to know what and how to hate. Otherwise, there is no love. If you have a daughter and there is a perpetrator next door that has a history of preying on little girls, and you find this man trying to abduct and denigrate your daughter, you damn well better hate him. And if you don't, then you are a worthless piece of crud yourself. So terror exists and it prevails because it's not one in a million of us who has invested the time, who has demonstrated the courage, who has embraced the characteristics which have caused Yahweh to inspire Dowd, and who will, as a result, expose and condemn Islam. The religion is responsible for 95% of today's terrorist atrocities. There isn't one in a million who understands and despises what Paul wrote 2,000 years ago sufficiently to systemically and systematically disavow Christian deceptions, holding the religion accountable for the crimes it has committed against God's people, including the Holocaust. There isn't one in a million willing to explain why we should not be political or patriotic, proving and providing the reasons that we should not support a political party. Today, the Democratic or the Democrat Marxists and the Republican MAGAs are out of their ever-loving mind. Both would be exceedingly destructive, empowered. Don't support a political party. Don't support any military. Don't support a spy organization, international diplomacy, or religion. These are counter to God. They are counter to the well-being of humankind. Now, until far more people come to their senses, shed their ignorance, develop some character, and start thinking rationally, deceit and violence will continue to ravage our world with its carnage, littering every place on earth. Well, at least until such time as Taruw'ah in year 6000 Yah, 2033. Now, for love to prevail, hate must exist. For there to be truth and for it to be known and accepted, lies must be loathed. There are many things that God has identified worthy of our disdain. For us to do as we should, they must be known. They must be understood. They must be exposed. They must be condemned. That's why I've written 13 books in the Goddamn Religion, Twistianity, and Babel series. All words should be wielded wisely using evidence and reason, which is precisely what I have done. Go to yadayah.com. Read those 13 volumes if you want to know how evil prevails. Now, before we go on, I want to reinforce a couple of things. Now, you guys get comfortable there, Wookie. I don't want you to work too hard at this. So the things I'd like to reinforce that are essential to Yahweh in this regard is, first, that God said that he hates the soul of the individual who disseminates lies on behalf of religion and who advocates violence. Now, this means a couple of things. First, we should never promote violence as a solution to any problem. We are encouraged to use words. Now, second, we must acknowledge that religion and other forms of deceit live within the souls of their advocates. The treacherous will continue to be corrosive as long as the proponents of such tactics exist. And that is why Yahweh will be expelling and exterminating so many of them on Taruw'ah in 2033. It also means that it is appropriate for us to condemn the most vocal and notorious proponents of delusions, since Yah clearly holds them in disdain. Now, the idea of a prison whose bars are comprised of light appears intriguing, and well, maybe it's especially fitting and proper because that's the idea that follows. It says, he will bring down on those who mislead and are mistaken, the deceitful and the religious, the Rasha again, a means of incarceration, comprised of fire made of flames, burning light and combustible material, which glows brightly and burns, and brimstone, in addition to a scorching spirit of righteous indignation, a fitting receptacle and appropriate fate for them. This is Mizmowr, lyrics to sing, Psalm 11:6. So it should be obvious that Yahweh despises everything that's associated with Rasha, religion, external and eternal incarceration in a cell comprised of burning sulfur while enduring the righteous indignation of an angry spirit does not sound appealing. So by all means, let's avoid being Rasha, misleading or mistaken, religious and thus deceitful, corrupting or corrupted, wrong and thus invalid, fraudulent or unethical. Let's be careful and not lead anyone astray. Let's avoid that which is inappropriate and confusing, particularly in relation to God. Now, being Tsadaq right is a better idea. In fact, Rasha is presented in direct contrast to being Tsadaq, correct. One is wrong, the other is right. And therein is the difference between life and death, Yahweh and Hasatan, Shamaym or Sheol. This reads, concerning those who are right and thus vindicated. Yahweh loves the upright and the correct. The straightforward and the reasonable shall gaze upon his face. Psalm 11:7. Well, that's the corollary, isn't it? God hates the overtly religious and those who are so vicious. But if you're right about him, Tsadaq, which is the single most important thing relative to God, being correct. If you are, then Yahweh loves you. He desires you. He ahab you. He wants to establish a close personal relationship with you. And he will view you as Tzedakah, being upright, correct, and vindicated, innocent. The straightforward and the reasonable, the yasher, those who are on the level and consistent, they're going to be able to gaze upon, to observe and behold Yahweh's face. I think it's so clear. I'm just surprised that there are any religious people. How could you carry around a book that says such a thing and not be responsive to it? Well, there are a significant number of things we need to know, understand, accept, and act upon to appear before Yahweh, and more importantly, to receive his love. But in the end, all of them are bound together by a single idea, and that is Tsadaq, being right. Faith means nothing. Belief means nothing. Religion means nothing. In fact, they're all counterproductive. Being right is what counts. You can't be right until you know. It is knowledge that leads one to being right. And you can even be beyond right when you understand. So when it comes to being correct about Yahweh, the thing I enjoy more than learning the truth is, well, coming to understand it and then sharing what we've come to comprehend. From the very beginning through 22 years and 35 books, we have been committed to more correctly and completely translating Yahweh's words, contemplating their implications, and to going where his guidance leads. Everything Yahweh has revealed on behalf of humankind is all directed at a single idea. God wants us to be Tsadaq. He wants us to be right. Because if he's right, if we're right, then every positive thing can happen from there. And this is an exceedingly good thing, because as it turns out, being Tsadaq right provides direct access to Yahweh's presence and to his love. He just said so. If you want to gaze upon the face of Yahweh, it is essential that you be right about him. Begins by knowing his name, begins by knowing what he said in his Torah and prophets. It begins by accepting the conditions of the covenant, which are 5. It continues by acting upon the means to deliver the 5 benefits of the covenant, which are delivered through the first 3 spring mikre, the Pesach, the fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Makotim. This is how we come to know that God can be trusted and relied upon to deliver on his promises. This is how we come to be immortal, to be deemed not guilty and therefore innocent in his presence. It's how we are enriched and empowered as his children. So in a world that's fixated on faith and hope, on being politically correct, even when it means being wrong, it is reassuring to know that from Yahweh's perspective, nothing matters more than knowing and accepting the truth. This means that everything we have translated and contemplated over these past 25 years has served a purpose. The entire Yada Yahowah family of books, all free at yadayah.com, provides the open-minded and the responsive with the opportunity to be Tsadaq, right? And it's an open book test, but you got to read them. You got to know where to find the answers in the book. You got to know that the answers are there for you. You have to walk away from faith and to knowledge. Now, we should not be surprised by any of this, including the, simplicity of it all. It is basic. Even with Abraham and with Yishak, there was a test, one where they were able to demonstrate their understanding and show that their response to God was correct and that they could be trusted to engage and to work with God to make a contribution to what he was trying to achieve. And speaking of being right, in this short psalm, Yahweh's name appears 4 times. Knowing and using Yahweh's name is the first step to heaven. Therefore, it reads, to the everlasting and majestic guide of Dowd, the beloved, with Yahweh, I find someone I can trust to keep me safe, such that I'm comfortable, confident, and harmonious. So why would you say, speaking to the religious of my soul, flee to your mountain like a bird, go away? Indeed, behold, those who are guilty of vexing religious malfeasance have bent the bow. They have fashioned and aimed their arrows upon the string to shoot through the darkness and shadows at those of us who are straightforward and correct in our thinking and judgment. Indeed, when the most basic principles are torn down, what should those who are right do? How should we respond? Yahweh is in his set-apart sanctuary and royal residence. Yahweh's seat of honor is in the heavens. He uses his faculty of sight to perceive what can be observed regarding the agreement. His gaze is like a beam of light, and it assesses the children of man. Yahweh examines the genuineness of those who are upright and correct. He's able to test our reliability. But the deceitful one who is wrong and religious, the one who is fond of violence, Hamas, he hates his soul. He will bring down on those who mislead and who are mistaken, the deceitful and the religious, a means of incarceration. It's going to be composed of burning light and of brimstone, in addition to a scorching spirit of righteous indignation, a fitting reciprocal and an appropriate fate for them. Concerning those who are right and thus vindicated, Yahweh loves them, the upright and the correct as well. The straightforward and the reasonable are the ones who will have the opportunity to gaze upon his face. And therein is Mizmowr, lyrics to sing, Psalm 11:7. Certainly something for us to digest, is it not? Something for us to appreciate, something for us to use as a means to grow, to become more than we would otherwise be without these insights. The man that Yahweh chose, the man that he placed his spirit upon, the man that he called his beloved son, the man he anointed as Hamashiach, has just told you that faith is meaningless. Religions are counterproductive. And what matters is knowledge that leads to understanding, so that you too can be right about God. You'll find these answers at yadayah.com. I would encourage you to go there. There is much that you can learn, much you can gain through the process. And now is the time, because there's so little of it remaining. Mankind has been out of the garden for just now 7 years, shy of 6,000. By 2033, everything that man has tried to control on this planet will be for naught. We're entering a time of a death spiral. We're going to witness calamities of a great magnitude and world war. going to be particularly harsh on Jews, but it's just, you need to know from the prophet's perspective, we're entering the worst time in human history. We have now, as the leader of the world, a man that Yahweh refers to as Rahab. He is Satan in the flesh. He is demon possessed. His name is Donald Trump. And over the next 7 years, he is going to be the most destructive force on earth. He already is. And, well, I can't tell you whether or not he is going to attack Iran again, whether his attack will be superficial as it was the last time or devastating. I can tell you that he will instigate wars, that he will betray Israel, and that ultimately he must be destroyed and will be. That will occur on Taruw'ah in 2033. But between now and then, you need to be aware that this is the most dangerous man in the history of humankind. He's going to be worse than anyone who has ever ravaged the human race prior to this time, and that's saying something. And so it's now or never for you. If you want to be part of the covenant family, if you want to be among those who gaze on Yahweh's face, you need to learn who God is, what he is offering, and what he expects in return. You need to disassociate yourself from the things he despises: religion and politics, conspiracy, militarism. This is God's invitation. It is our invitation to you on his behalf. I thank you for listening, and we look forward to returning to our ocean studio and the revelation of yet another insight that can be gleaned from our returning King, our Messiah, the very Son of God, our Savior, Dowd. So until next time, good day.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch y'all on our next podcast.